Let's see. Welcome again. Welcome. We're going to just wait here 1 minute to get started. There's some people joining. So just a few more seconds and we'll get started. It's not a fair question, but I'll ask it because I know the names. It's like a memory test. But if you have been here before during the week, you could use the React button to either give us a thumbs up or something or emoji to tell us you've been here before. Thank you. That's great. Thank you. So, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our day 4, our Caregiver Appreciation Week. My name is Kirti Khalsa. I'm the CEO of the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation. And this afternoon, we have a really wonderful, awesome speaker. We're delighted to have. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her. I'm sure this is not everything, but Julia Yarbough is here with us. Hi, Julia. Julia is a multiple Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist. And oops, let me move this out of the way. She has more than 25 years experience anchoring and reporting and producing. Having served as a family caregiver to her aging and now deceased mother, Julia is passionate about raising awareness and educating others to the realities facing family caregivers and advocating for improved services. She created the Keeping It Real Caregiving website and public speaking platform to produce content to educate fellow caregivers. This is how I got to know Julia. She also publishes the Keeping It Real Caregiving.substack.com newsletter and serves as an AARP Washington State volunteer. Julia's professional positions include communications consultant with the national media and research firm Magid Associates. She previously served as morning anchor and manager for Action News Now in Chico, California, as well as evening anchor in Miami and South Florida, Los Angeles, and Louisville, Kentucky. Julia also served in the government sector as press information officer with the Chico Police Department and as media ambassador for the city of Miami Beach. She's the recipient of numerous awards, including twice the prestigious NADA's Emmy. The American Society on Aging selected Julia to join the 2022 ASA RISE cohort training program. Congratulations. I had my eye on that, so congratulations. Julia has served as a regional advocate for the California Coalition on Family Caregiving and as a member of the Equity in Aging and Disability Advisory Committee with the California Department of Aging, Master Plan for Aging. The Gerontological Society of America selected Julia as a 2020 Journalist in Aging Fellow. Other honors include the Sunshine State Award from the Society of Professional Journalists, the 3 CMA Savvy Award for Governmental Programming, and a 2009 fellowship with the Institute of Journalism and Natural Resources. Other professional milestones include leading production projects for a global corporation visiting site locations in Nairobi, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Tanzania, covering the 2006 and 2008 Olympic Games for NBC, and producing a recruitment video for the Miami Beach Police Department. But most of all, I would say Julia brings a huge heart to this difficult, complex topic. And we're very grateful, Julia, to have you here to share your knowledge with us. And we ran a little poll here, so I think we're all seeing, the results. And Julia, please take it away.
All right. First of all, good morning, everybody, and good afternoon. I'm glancing through the poll just to see what some of the numbers were. And my disclaimer is that you may see me put my glasses on and off so that I can actually see everything on my screen. Thank you for joining this morning. I know your time is valuable. Everybody's busy, so I will attempt to cover quite a bit of information in a storytelling format. So let me share my screen for starters. I've been practicing that so that we can, okay, now I go to slideshow so that I can play from start. There we go. All right, can everybody see that? Just nod your heads. Okay. Thank you very much, Kirti, for that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate that. And I hope that all of you could get a sense that throughout my career in different dimensions, there is a strong sense of advocacy in there. And so we're going to talk about that as we move through. We'll touch on it. But again, I'm Julia Yarbough, and welcome to How to Prepare Now for the Cost and Realities of Family Caregiving. As Kirti said, I am a news anchor, and so I'm a storyteller. I like to present in a fashion that weaves a story through, so all of this makes sense while still giving you information about care and how you can plan ahead. The Keeping It Real Caregiving story, which is how I'm here spending part of the time with all of you, really has to do with my parents. This is, I love, circa 1969. And you can see in that picture, that's little old me. And my mom and dad were a military family. Dad was getting an award. I'm not sure for what. But you can see there that I was literally terrified by the look on my face, and I was glued to my mom's side. Terrified, glued to mom's side. Little did I know that as the years would roll by, and life would evolve, that would be the same case for me, just in a different capacity. Again, there I am next to my mom. I'm not terrified, but that was coming. This image was from New York City. I took my mom there for her birthday one year. And we went to a couple of Broadway shows. And I can say that this was one of the first times that I truly had a sense that my mom was aging and having issues. Because as we went out one evening, she was really having a hard time walking. She was losing her balance. I had to hold on to her. And there was a sense of fear. She was very uncomfortable. And I realized, wow, my mother, who was always strong and feisty and I'll do it myself kind of attitude, she needed my help and she was very uncomfortable. And that was one of the moments when I realized, wow, I may be the one who is going to have the task of caring for my mom. That leads to what we're going to talk about today. I want to share some facts with you, and I'm not going to dive too deep into the numbers and the stats because that can get old real fast, but it's important that we have that information. We're going to go over some caregiving facts. I want some of this information to provide a groundwork for you that you can do a reality check for yourself, to really think about where you are right now, where you might be, and where you hope to be when it comes to caregiving. We're going to go through and practice and be aware of what I call the 3 Ps, being practical, planning, and prepared. And within each of those, there are some categories to think about. And it'll be different for each person, but this is a framework that I think is valuable to start to put into your back pocket. We'll do some review with some key takeaways to remember, and then we'll have time at the end for Q&A and some interaction. So I want us to be able to really share in this together. Some facts to consider, and this again is setting the groundwork. I'm sure you've all heard of AARP, and as Kirti said, I am a recent AARP Washington State volunteer, but I've been following the Caregiving in the U.S. Report that AARP conducts with the National Alliance for Caregiver for many years. The last one was in 2020. The most recent came out this summer. And these are some of the numbers that we're looking at, that all of you are either already in or you know somebody who will be. 59 million caregivers caring for an adult 18 or older, right? So that could be a child, a sibling, a spouse, maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's a friend. 4 million caregivers caring for somebody under 18, right? So, I mean, those are staggering numbers, right? We're talking 63 million people. And the reason this is important is that it truly means that caregiving touches almost everybody in some way, shape, or form. We're going to talk more about some of those aspects. And a key thing to remember also is that these numbers are continually increasing. At the 2020 report, and I'm going off of memory here, I think the number was 45.3 million. So in 5 years, we went from 45 up to 63. And again, don't quote me on that. I didn't put that in my notes, but the numbers have steadily been increasing. To drive home that point, and I love this slide because it really gives an easy way to see that increase and the word prevalence. It's a very technical and research-driven word, but you can see that number, right? 43.5 million in 2015, 53 million in 2020, 63 million in 2025, right? So do you see that exponential jump? That means we're aging. More of us are going to be caring for somebody in our own circle or interacting with somebody who's also in that role, which means I believe that the ship is turning slowly in terms of services and support and understanding what this means, but it can take a while for the ship to turn. So in the meantime, we have to prepare ourselves and be ready and keep an open mind. The other key fact is that while caregivers go across all different age ranges, men, women, racial groups, cultural groups, the numbers still point out that the bulk of caregivers are women, right? This is important because when we think about the services that are available, that then means that as women, it is vital for all of us to really step back and say, I can't put my head in the sand. I cannot put my head in the sand. I have to think about what this means for me and my family and my own future, right? So it's connecting the dots, which is something else that I like to say. All right, so those are some of the numbers. Let's talk about the concept of thinking of caregiving in a slightly different way. As I said, I'm a storyteller and I like to share with visual pictures. Plus, I miss my mom. I miss Miss Nellie every day. So it always makes me happy when I can share these little pictures. And I will tell you, she would skin me alive if she knew that I was sharing her photos. She always hated that. But I think it's a good way to really reinforce what we all should be thinking about. So we did the poll at the beginning. Some other concepts that you can take away, and this is good to ask other people in your circle as well. Are you a caregiver? And it may not be just the hands-on, in the home caregiving or the way they show the different companies that have commercials of walking through the park, pushing somebody in a wheelchair, right? Maybe you're helping a relative with relocating and acquiring housing because they just can't handle all of that on their own. The documents, the paperwork, the logistics, the packing, right? So relocation and housing is a form of caregiving. Think about if you or somebody you know is already doing that, right? Transportation. Are you the person who's providing the main source of transportation for a loved one or friend or family member? To and from the grocery store, to and from the doctors, maybe running to the pharmacy, just going out to do something fun, right? You are now a caregiver. Handling medical appointments, just fun activities, maybe even going shopping. If that's part of your daily or weekly role that you are doing those activities, that is a type of caregiving. And you may not think about this, but also having a bit of emotional and social support for the person that you might be caring for without realizing that you're caring for. Are you the person that they call for all of their outlet, for their activities, when they're having a good day, when they're having a bad day? It's important to realize that some of that can fall to you, and you may not be prepared for that because you're thinking, I'm not a caregiver, right? So I broke out these these items because when my mom first moved to live with me in South Florida in 2000, if you had asked me, Julia, are you a caregiver? I would have said, no, absolutely not. No, 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 not a caregiver. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm doing my own thing, right? And I say that because some people asked me that and I was a little bent because I just didn't like the word. I didn't like the connotation. But I encourage all of you, and the fact that you're on this call tells me a lot. So share this with other people as well. The sooner you can begin to think of yourself as a caregiver, the better off you will be, because part of it is a mindset. It's not just the logistics. It's not just the emotional support. It's not just that transportation. It's the whole tapestry of everything that will happen as a caregiver. There's a lot of planning, and we're going to talk about that. And so the sooner you can embrace that, the better. I didn't do that. I fought it every step of the way. And I realized I lost valuable time in planning, in organizing, in getting the logistics in place and educating myself. All of that makes sense? I can see some heads, so I'll move on. So the 3 P's: practical, planning, prepared. I will tell you that because of my background professionally as a news reporter and anchor, and I saw a lot of things in my 20 plus years of reporting. So sometimes, in full disclosure, I can tend to be a little cynical, but that's only because I've seen things. And I want people to take the steps to prepare and plan ahead. I like to think of myself almost as a prepper when it comes to caregiving and family items. Because things happen that you cannot plan for, and they just happen out of the blue. I've been accused of being not warm and fuzzy, but rather cold and distant, which I don't think I am. I'm just very logistical. And I know that when it comes to caregiving, it's easy to slip into being emotional and letting something push you sideways, but the task at hand doesn't go away. Let's talk about what practical might look like. And some of this will be some scenarios that I want you to think about, right? A large part of being an effective caregiver is thinking about, how am I going to pull this off? Remember, I said, don't put your head in the sand. I'll give you a scenario. Long before my mom's health started declining, I had a close friend who said, Julia, your mom is stuck to your side all the time, just like those pictures from when I was a little kid. Every event I went to, she was with me. I took her to different parties and shows, and I was at the house, and I was doing the transportation and the shopping and all of those things that I outlined, but I still wasn't thinking about the caregiving. And this friend said, from what I'm seeing, looks like the role of being a caregiver for Nellie is going to fall on you. Are you ready? And at that time, I didn't have any platforms like this or webinars that I could go to. So I was pretty much flying blindly. And he kept saying to me, you have to get ready, start researching now. And I didn't really know what that meant. At the same time, I also had the HR person where I worked knew that I was caring for my mom. And she said, do you have any special type of insurance or savings? Because aren't you going to be taking care of your mom, and you're single and it's just you? How are you going to do all of that? I am so thankful to this day that both of those people in my life dropped those suggestions into the bucket for me. And the biggest thing that really stuck with me was the idea of savings and finances. How was I going to pull this off if I thought, wow, what if I end up having to take care of my mother? How am I going to do that financially? And this is where that practical comes in. That I could have sat and said, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. Or, oh, maybe one of my siblings will handle it. Or maybe something else will happen. Who knows what that something else would have been? But that was just wishful thinking. Where instead I had to be practical and say, okay, what's the task in front of you? What do you need to do to start planning for this? I believe practical starts with assessing your savings and looking across the board at what's possible. Now, keep in mind, every family is different, right? Every banking account is different. But I want to share some other statistics, only a few, I promise, to help you connect the dots between why all of this is so important. According to US News and World Report, 42% of Americans have no emergency savings. Zero. Okay. 40% would be unable to cover an emergency expense of $1,000, right? So that's, almost half. That's a large percentage of people. Right? Now, remember that graph I showed you that said that women were still more apt to be family caregivers? Add to that this reality. 49% of the women surveyed have no emergency fund. None. Okay, so if you start to connect these dots, this does not bode well for family caregiving. When we think about what may be coming down the pike for a loved one, or maybe even ourselves, right? That's what I'm starting to think about all the time now. Savings is a crucial part of this. Now, add to that the fact that we are living longer, all of us, right? Recent stats from mortality in the United States, longevity is up for men and women here in the US. Males, 75.8 years on average, but women, we live longer. We live longer than men. And the longevity number is increasing according to the US Census, right? So if we take all three of those realities together, we live longer, we don't have any savings, and we're the predominant family caregivers. Those three things do not add up to a good outcome unless we do everything we can as early as we can to start planning and to be practical. And I'm not saying to sit down and look at your bank account and go, oh my gosh, I don't have enough savings, and just throw in the towel. No, it means think about, how can I be practical with what I do have to work with? It's a roadmap. And I want you to think of your caregiving journey as a map. You probably wouldn't get in the car and say, you know what? I'm going to drive from Washington State all the way to New York, and I'm just going to go. I'm not going to have a GPS on my phone. I'm not going to have a fold-out map. I'm just going to go. You probably wouldn't do that, correct? You would plan how you're going to get there. But each of us, because of our situation, might plan how we get there differently. Maybe I'm traveling in the spring, so I go across I-80. Weather's good. Maybe I'm traveling in the winter and I go, you know what? I need to go farther south and take I-20. Maybe it's the middle of the summer and I'm feeling really, wanting to go down and take my chances with hurricane season. And then I take I-10 and go across the south. I'm still going to get there eventually, but it's a different planning. That's how I want you to think about your family caregiving journey, right? Map out your individual family situation and then begin planning. So how might we do that? I want to talk about what you're seeing on your screen now in a moment, but I want to back up a second. When we talked about the practical leading into the planning and the scenario that I mentioned, I think I mentioned it and then didn't tell you. So let's say you're caring for somebody, and I'll use my mom's example. Mom had Parkinson's disease and diabetes and heart disease, right? So I did some reading on those medical conditions, but not as much as I should have because her condition would affect me and how I planned. I'll narrow it down to her Parkinson's. Mom was starting to have issues with mobility of her balance, standing on her own, grip, being able to take care of herself. And mom lived at the time in a 2-story townhome. She lived about 10 minutes from me, but she was on her own. So as I was watching her year after year and having a little bit more difficulty, I think I spelled planning wrong. I just noticed that there are 2 N's in that. I'll fix that later. I thought, mom's not going to do well on stairs. This is going to cause an issue if we don't think about this now, right? And the more reading I did on Parkinson's, I realized if her mobility goes or her balance, stairs are dangerous. Again, I could put my head in the sand and say, well, there's nothing I could do about it. But I was practical and began planning. Eventually, mom cannot live here with these stairs. What does that look like? Does that mean she moves in with me? Does that mean I find her another place? Obviously, it needs to be a 1-story place, and it needs to be a unit that she's safe and comfortable. But what about the bathrooms? Will she be safe in the bathroom? She can't get in and out of a tub. I need to find a place that has no stairs, no tub, wide enough doorways, because what if she loses the ability to walk and has a wheelchair or a walker? All of these things were looking forward and creating scenarios and then working backwards. Worst case scenario, working backwards, having a plan, hoping that I never had to put those plans in place. But if I did, I already had it mapped out. I encourage all of you to think about scenarios that match your personal situation. And it is hard. It is hard to make yourself think about what happens if mom or dad or aunt and uncle loses their eyesight. It is hard to do that. But I encourage you, for the sake of your loved one, for the sake of your sanity, and for the sake of your pocketbook and how you're going to put things in place, start thinking ahead, researching as much as you can, and plan. This statement is one that I took a picture of. I didn't have everything digital. In the last 8 months of mom's life, she was in an assisted living facility. And I will tell you, I hated making that decision. Absolutely ripped me to pieces. I don't even have this in my notes, but I will say, I encourage you to never say never, because it can mess you up in the head if it comes to having to do it. My mom's health was starting to decline. Mentally, she was sharp as a tack. She could run circles around anybody. But physically, the Parkinson's was taking a toll, and it was becoming unsafe and dangerous for me to care for mom in our home. Even though I had special guardrails in the bathroom, a special tub chair, I made sure to help with her showering. I had an aide on hand to help with showering. But it was too dangerous for her to be there, and it was becoming dangerous for me. And so we made the decision, and she fully supported that. And we located an assisted living facility. And the amount you see here is 1 month of what this cost. 1 month, right? $5,794. And this wasn't an exclusive facility. It was the best one that I could find that I felt comfortable having my mom there. But this was all private pay. This was not covered by Medicare. Medicare does not cover assisted living, right? And that's key. If you don't already know that, Medicare does not cover assisted living, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about the difference of assisted living and skilled nursing. So this was 1 month. Had I not started planning all those years ago when mom was still in her townhome, there's no way we would have been able to do this, right? Long and short of it, when I realized mom was going to hurt herself on the stairs, we sold her townhome, and my vision was, I am going to have to use that money to make sure that mom has care as she ages. So in that particular situation, we came out okay, but it was just luck and then also that planning. In addition to that, let's see, let me switch screens. There were additional monthly expenses, and this is where the planning comes in. Some of that planning may be assessing what you have, assessing what your loved ones have, understanding and having those conversations with other family members. Is there a possibility of having a pool of funds? And it's not a, we must, or it has to be this number. Whatever you can identify can be a benefit to you. So this is a photo of me and Miss Nellie. And this was during COVID. Mom's last 9 months were in the care facility in 2020 during COVID. Luckily, she did not pass from COVID. She passed at age 90 from simply old age, and her body had given out on her, and it was time. But I was a major thorn in the facility side. We had a love-hate relationship. I trusted them, and it was one of the better facilities that I could find, but I was there every single day. And the expenses not only included that monthly bill, but it also included paying an additional amount for a home care aide 4 hours a day. And I didn't have to do that. I chose to do that because I wanted to make sure that mom had extra hands-on care for a shower every day and helping to brush her teeth and get her hair combed and get dressed. So as a side note, and it's a whole nother conversation for a different day and a different session, I quickly learned that maybe at home you just assume that you're going to take a shower or a bath every day. In many care facilities, because staffing is limited, they don't have the number of people to make sure that every single client can get a shower every single day. This was not acceptable for me, right? So I paid for an additional care aide who could go in and take care of my mother. Plus, I could get intel every day because remember, this was during COVID. We were also paying for medical insurance. So yes, there was Medicare. As you saw in the first picture, we were military, so we had something called TRICARE. But going back to the planning and prepared, I did not know that my mother had TRICARE. So I had purchased another insurance policy, Medigap. And then all of her doctors were through that insurance. So I didn't want to change it once I learned she had TRICARE. So I was still paying that additional amount. The good part was that mom had 3 tiers of insurance. So no matter what situation came up, we were always seen by a doctor. Again, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother session. Emergency items that came up. I had a call one morning that we needed to get mom over to the ER from this facility. If I remember correctly, that ambulance charge was $3,800. Insurance didn't cover all of it, even though I had 3 tiers of insurance, right? So all of those extra funds that I had were quickly diminishing. And then just incidentals, right? So you can see how quickly it becomes imperative that you plan ahead and identify anything that you may have to work with and be realistic with yourself. Long-term care, final thing that I want to mention, that HR person that worked with me, she encouraged me to get a long-term care plan. I didn't really understand what I was purchasing. I didn't read the fine print. You should. But I highly encourage you to look at a situation being practical and to say, if I can afford any level of long-term care, begin doing your research, do your homework, find a reputable agent and company, and think about that possibility. The difference between that $57.94 and my reimbursement for long-term care still wasn't enough to cover it, but it chopped what was out of pocket for me down to about $3,000. Right? And this is where the concept of understanding, and I'm going to skip this slide for the sake of time, but this is an annual median cost for in-home care, assisted living, and nursing home care. And I'm happy to share this afterwards. And you can just see some of the numbers of why it is so important to plan, right? Before I dive in again to the concept of making sure that you understand some Medicare aspects, long-term care insurance, read your fine print. There was a different level of coverage or reimbursement between an assisted living facility, which my mom was at, and that was $79 a day. Long-term care insurance reimbursement for a skilled nursing facility was $179 per day, right? So if you quickly do the math, $79 a day at 31 days a month does not cover $57.94. So although I had that insurance and the level of care that my mother was getting was akin to a skilled nursing facility, the facility was licensed as a assisted living facility, right? So I'm actually I'll come back to the Medicare concept. This is why it's important to research your local facilities. Understand what your individual community has. Do you have a handful of assisted living facilities that have space? Are they at a quality that is suitable for you and your family? And what does it cost? I encourage you to do this well in advance of needing it. Maybe even visit some of them so that you can get eyes on the facility, right? Assisted living facility versus skilled nursing facility. I have learned that the care industry uses a lot of acronyms that many of us don't know what those things are, right? So when you see ALF or SNF, assisted living facility, again, that's some hands-on help for a loved one, some level of care, but a skilled nursing facility is more or less what we call a nursing home, right? Sometimes SNF is paid for or a part of it by Medicare, but typically that's if you are referred through a hospital, not just on your own if you show up. So if you are in assisted living, that's private pay, whether it's out of your pocket, some other savings, or some other insurance like LTC and coverage that you might have. It's also important to note the differences because different state agencies cover and oversee the legalities of these facilities. In some states, it's the exact same agency. In California, 2 different agencies handled ALF and SNF. It's important to do your research early so that you have time to know who owns the facilities. Do a background check on them. Do they have any lawsuits against them? What's their safety record? How often do they have staff who can give showers? How many staff per person? Like all those things that take time to know about. And if you are not prepared ahead of time, then you're in a crisis situation. And it's a lot to dig through. And it's not fun stuff. It can be heavy. Start early. Educate yourself so that you know what you're up against. We talked about the cost and who pays. It's important to understand the difference between the facilities so you can understand what costs are associated with each and how that can be paid. And then also, what are your own resources? What are the resources of your loved one? What are the resources of family? And how can all of that be put together to assist in this? That ties into the insurance coverage. Research, research, research. Know what you're up against ahead of time, right? I had a friend tell me once, get the coverage that you can afford, as high as you can, assuming that you may never need it. If you can afford the Gold Plus Platinum X coverage, get that. Whatever you can afford, get that coverage. Crucial documents. Don't wait until a situation hits you in the face. And again, we talked about those acronyms. POA, power of attorney. Magical document to have if you are caring for someone so that you can have access into the hospital, be able to have access to their records, talk to some of their care providers. I am not an attorney or a tax or financial person. I encourage you to consult your local expert, reach out for that, understand what a power of attorney is and what is best for you and your family. Something called a POLST. I had never heard of a POLST. Physicians, let me make sure I have this right. The physician's order for life-sustaining treatment. Right? I had never heard of this document, but it is the go-to document that determines if care will be rendered depending on what may happen with your loved one. Maybe EMT comes to your house for an emergency. They'll ask you, do you have a pulse? Because they need to know how far they should go to keep your loved one alive, right? That's something that you should talk with your doctor about. Pulsed. It may look different in each state, but I highly encourage you to do a little research on that. If you're military, the DD-214, I just wrote an article on this for Veterans Day, in fact. Do the research. DD-214 is the magical form for the military world. Without that, you're stymied in terms of getting extra care and assistance and getting into the system. And finally, being prepared means being an advocate. Being an advocate at all times for your loved one. I had said that I was Velcroed to my mom as a child, terrified. Near the end, I was Velcroed to her, terrified for me of losing her. But I was an advocate at the hospital with her, in doctor's appointments, on phone calls. And a quick story, I know we're almost out of time as we want to have some questions, so I may skip a few slides. The importance of being an advocate. One of our doctor's visits, I was there, and my mom, as I said, was sharp as a tack. Her body was failing, but she was sharp. I go to the hospital. I couldn't stay overnight, and I arrived the next morning, and my mom is very foggy, kind of disheveled. She's not able to feed herself. Her words were slurring. And I thought, wait a minute, this is not my mother. What happened in this, maybe 10-hour span, right? Understand your loved one's benchmark so that you can be the advocate for any care. When I called out the care team on this, and I said, this is not my mother's benchmark. You cannot tell me that in the 24 hours she's been here, that this is her decline. Turns out, because I kept asking questions, they had changed her medication time schedule. She was on medication for Parkinson's disease, which is a neurological medication. You can't just willy-nilly give it at different times. And it created a spiral downward effect for her, right? You have to be an advocate. You will learn things that you had no idea you were going to learn, and you will have the strength of 1 million people because it's your loved one, but you have to be an advocate for them. I have some resources here, and I'll come back to this page at the tail end just so you can see it. And it's just some things that may come in handy. And again, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip through. I'm just going to put all 4 of these up on the screen. Reality check. Start early. How is all this going to impact my family? Create scenarios and come up with plans. Embrace it, folks. 63 million people, that means a lot of us are caregivers. It's just that simple. Those 3 Ps, it'll look different for everybody, but feel free to adapt it, approach it how it works well for you, and start understanding those acronyms. They'll be thrown at you. That ALF versus SNF can be huge because that ties directly to your savings, your resources, and your insurance. So I highly encourage you to do all of that and do it early. And finally, as we wrap up, my final pictures, I can tell you that there were times when I was pulling my hair out. I was angry, I was depressed, I felt like the world had been put upon me. Why me? It's so unfair. I hate this. And then I'd feel guilty that I felt that way. And then I knew that it was wonderful to take care of my mom. But then I'd say, how long is this going to last? And then I'd say, but that's a horrible thing to think. Because once it's over, right? And there will be rough times. You know, I would just go sit in my car and scream, or I would cry. And I just was at my wit's end, and I was tired. I was tired all the time because I was working full time, and then COVID was happening, and I was still taking care of mom, and it just seemed there was no way out, which is kind of why I started writing and becoming an advocate. Both of my parents are buried at the Presidio National Cemetery in San Francisco, and I love that they're together. But again, that DD 214 I just mentioned, that's why we have this headstone, and that's why we're at the Presidio. Without DD 214, would not have happened. And they have a beautiful view. It looks out over San Francisco Bay and Alcatraz. It's like the best spot ever in the Presidio. And I'll leave you with this thought. A friend of mine told me years ago, Julia, you're going to make yourself crazy. Why don't you change your thinking? And instead of saying, I have to take care of my mother, say, I get to take care of my mother. It made all the difference, all the difference. And he's right, because there were moments along the way that I learned a different side of who my mother was. You know, I saw Miss Nellie as an older, frail, frightened at times, vulnerable woman, not my mom. And that was valuable to me. And those are moments that my siblings don't have. I could share them, but those are moments that I have because I got to take care of my mom. So that's my presentation. I've put this information up here. And you tell me, do you want me to leave this up, or do you want me to go back to that other page that shows some of the resources?
I would say everybody's going to get your contact information anyway. So maybe
Okay.
let's go back to the page with the resources for now. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, for a Q&A, then we can just have you on the
Yeah.
screen.
Okay.
So just for a few minutes, we can leave this up. Well, I think this was so amazing and so important to sort of really bring it to real, you know, keep it real. Like this is the, nuts and bolts, right? Which is absolutely necessary. And thank you very much for sharing all this. I think it's just really important. Julia, we have a couple of comments, um, and I'll just say somebody said that home safety is so important to think about. So preparing for fall risks and, bathrooms, how to adjust the bathrooms and all this, of course. It's good. I think it's a good awareness tactic to have for
Right.
all of us that are getting older, because, you trip more easily, you fall more easily.
Exactly.
So it's a good idea.
Yeah. And one of the things we did, we put not just one grab bar in the shower, we put one horizontal right near the knobs. We put one vertical on the inside, but we also put one on the outside so that you could hold on while you were stepping out of the shower and have a grip. And I use those myself. Bathrooms can be very dangerous. So really look at stairs, look at bathrooms, even think about your kitchen, how it's set up. Can a loved one reach items? Right. And it's those little things that we tend not to think about, but it's the pre-planning that can make a huge difference.
Yes. And the question is, what are your thoughts on adult family homes as an option?
I mean, in terms of several different people living in a small group home, is that the concept?
I think so. I
And
see.
and if that's the concept, so I actually did a couple of stories with an organization just outside of Chico that had that type of setup. From my experience, and again, remember, I'm not a builder, I'm not a physician. It depends on the staffing and how that home is set up. Really look at the layout. Is it safe for maneuvering? If something happens and there's an emergency, what about staff? And that's huge. That was a question that I asked the facilities when I was researching. What's your staff to patient ratio? And their answer was, well, we take good care of our clients. And I said, but that's not what I asked you. I said, what is your staff to patient ratio? And they really couldn't answer that. And then I dug a little deeper to say, is there a law? Is there a guideline that says you have to have X number of staff per client? And at that time, there was not, which really was disarming to me. And don't quote me, but I believe there had been a change to that was just rolled back and overturned, I think. So it's key that you ask those questions, because one person, and the scenario I said to the administrator is, I said, what if 6 of your clients have a bathroom blowout at the same time and there's only one staff member? 5 people are now sitting in their blowout for a long time because one person can't handle all of that. So ask those questions. What's the staff ratio? Who prepares the food? Is it an on-staff chef, or is it a company that they bring in pre-made food? Is the food nutritious for your loved one? So these are things we don't necessarily think about on the surface, but dig a little deeper.
And the food situation, oh my gosh. I mean, don't get me started. Yes, so Adrian actually answered, he said AFH question was about small communities that might be more affordable.
Yeah.
However, they won't have the same type of services.
Yeah, and it depends on the community. And I will tell you that in the thick of this, I was thinking, I'm going to open my own facility. I want other people to be cared for as well as when mom was still in my home. And I pulled together some CNAs and another business person and my husband, who's an accountant, and we put together a model and a format. The numbers would not work out building out the care level that I wanted. And that told me a lot. And I thought, wow, there would be 3 people that could afford this if we were able to put this together. Because to have a full-time, a nurse, a registered nurse on staff all the time, but then you need 2 or 3. And then I would want a CNA, and then I wanted somebody who could cook, and then I wanted extra staff. And so it adds up. So even if it's a small facility, do the research first and get eyes on it. And this is again my opinion, I don't believe it's safe to just follow the CMS guidelines that say it's ranked 1 to 5. Don't believe those. Go physically visit the facilities so that you can see how the clients are being treated, and show up without an appointment. Because if they know you're coming, of course, everything's going to be perfect. So just show up and say, listen, I really need to tour the facility because my loved one may need to be here.
Good one. Good one.
Oh, a little gangster is what I'm saying.
They have a comment. Thank you for the honesty and for making it real and sharing, how you felt and all that. Question is, what do you think is the best way to initiate the first conversation about finances and long-term care with family members? For some, it might be difficult to bring up or to be heard.
Each family is so different, and it could depend on the dynamics, the relationship you have with your family, and only you know that. Um, there could be cultural differences to bring up those conversations. Think about what you believe would be a good entryway. I used comedy. Um, and I knew that my mom did not want to think about any of this. And so I would use comedy. And she was on those stairs. And I would say, Mom, we need to talk about this. And she'd say, I said, Mom, one day I'm going to come over here and I'm going to find you crumpled up at the bottom of the stairs. And then what are we going to do? And she just looked at me. I said, seriously, I don't want to find you down here. Let's talk about this. And then she chuckled, and we were able to start really planning ahead of what that would look like, of selling her place, moving. And then as we got closer, well, no, shouldn't say closer, but as she knew she was getting older and more frail, I think she was more open to the conversation of making sure that we had a will, which I didn't mention in here, but we made sure that we had a will. And, I sat down with her one afternoon and said, what do you want? This isn't about anybody else telling you what you want. What do you want? And we worked through that. Very emotional. But you saw the photo from the cemetery. My mom was adamant that she wanted no service of any kind, nothing. And I had to promise that. And then several other siblings who all lived elsewhere. Well, how could you do that? You didn't even tell us. I said, Mom didn't want any service. I promised her that, and we have it in the will. So, and she said, and this is harsh, but she said, I don't see why you people should be spending money on a casket and a service. Just have me cremated and put me in a box. That was my mother. But we honored those wishes. And it wasn't a box, it was a little urn. And it was just myself, my husband, the groundskeepers. She joined my dad. We watched them cover it back up, and that was that. So, figure out what will work, the dynamic of your family. It's different for everybody. I don't think, from my experience, there is no one size fits all in any of the caregiving space, because it all depends on the dynamics of the people and the situation.
I have, there's one more question I'd like to squeeze in here. No matter how I try to explain it, my mom cannot understand that she will need more care in the future. She has Alzheimer's and is refusing to ever leave her home. Any tips for having these conversations about ALF or memory care? I wish she could be involved in this process. It's a tough one.
Yeah, that one is tough, and that may be something that you can speak better to. I would say, if you have not yet reached out to your local Alzheimer's organizations, because some of that guidance can be very specific in terms of how you're communicating with your loved one. And of course, you don't want to make them fearful, but you have to be realistic that they could get hurt. And again, I used comedy, but when I approached it, that this could be your life that we're talking about. And that finally registered through, because my mom, despite her decline, she just wanted to keep living.
Mhm. So interesting. In my experience, I've noticed, especially with elderly people, that if there is a doctor involved, if you could get the doctor as the authority, person to have a saying into this, and maybe, let's face it, when we speak with our loved ones that have cognitive, difficulties, we may have to kind of adjust to the reality, right? And I feel that if your doctor or some doctor figure could have a saying and say, I want you to go there, and maybe go say you need to go for a week, and then she would stay. You just it becomes more of a permanent thing. That could be a way, and I'm not saying this should be the way, but sometimes you have to sort of massage what the reality is, to help your loved one,
Yeah.
because sometimes they don't understand. So we're about at the end of our hour. Julia, this was really, really important conversation. I have a few comments. I love the statement about getting to care. That drives it home for sure. It's an honor, and one I think a lot of us plan for and know we were meant for in the future. And this information encouragement is so important. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. Thank you. And more thanks. I want to thank you, Julia, very much for sharing this, and thank everybody for being here today. We have one more session tomorrow, and just look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Julia, join us anytime. And everybody should really look at Julia's newsletter because I learned a lot from her. So we
But then
will put
we'll
the
be connecting more, so that'll be good.
yes, and we will put all the links in the handouts and in the recordings, so you can stay in touch with Julia. So everybody have a great evening, great rest of your day, and thanks again.